All right, let's get right into this explainer. We're going to uncover exactly why your recent salary hike might still be leaving you feeling completely financially stuck. Today, we're unpacking a hidden system, one that literally affects every single money decision you make. You know the feeling, right? You're working harder, you finally get promoted, you see a bigger number on your paycheck, but your day-to-day life just doesn't feel any easier? It's a wildly frustrating paradox, but as we're going to see, it actually makes perfect mathematical sense once you look under the hood at the mechanics.
Think about it for a second. You get a 5, 10, or hey, maybe even a 15% raise. And for a brief moment, it feels like a total win. More money, more security, right? But then, just a few months later, reality hits. Groceries are up, your rent jumps, fuel costs an arm and a leg. Even your daily coffee or a quick takeout dinner suddenly feels like a crazy luxury. You're earning more money than you ever have in your entire life, yet somehow, getting ahead just feels harder. So what is really going on here?
Well, this perfectly illustrates the illusion of getting richer. Let's look at a really concrete example. Imagine back in 2015, your monthly salary was 50,000 rupees. Fast forward to today, and your salary has doubled to 1 lakh. Now, on paper, that sounds absolutely fantastic. You literally doubled your income. But here's the massive flaw in that logic. If your cost of living has also doubled during that exact same time frame, are you actually any richer? The uncomfortable truth is, no, you aren't. Your actual standard of living hasn't budged an inch.
And this is exactly where the confusion happens. See, most of us are trained to focus purely on the raw number on our paycheck, but economists, they don't look at it that way at all. Instead, they focus on a crucial metric called purchasing power. Purchasing power is simply what your money can actually buy in the real world. And that is what truly determines your standard of living. Look, earning a giant stack of cash is completely meaningless if buying everyday items requires an even bigger stock of cash.
Moving on to Section 1, the silent thief, inflation. This is the invisible enemy that's secretly draining your bank account day in and day out.
Think about a standard 100-rupee note. Just really consider what that single piece of paper could buy 20 years ago compared to what it can buy today. The physical note hasn't changed at all. It's the exact same piece of currency, but its purchasing power, it's practically vanished. Every single year, goods and services, food, housing, healthcare, education, they all become just a little bit more expensive. And over time, those tiny increments snowball, and your money simply buys less.
Now, the crucial point here is understanding why this happens. It's super easy to just point the finger at corporate greed, right? But the reality is actually a much more complex web. Prices go up because raw materials and energy costs spike. Transportation and labor get more expensive. Throw in disrupted supply chains and governments literally printing more money, and prices inevitably climb. In our highly interconnected world, a global conflict happening thousands of kilometers away can directly inflate the price of fuel right in your hometown.
Okay, Section 2, the salary problem, falling behind. Let's look at exactly how this massive macroeconomic cycle traps the average hardworking professional.
Just look at the mathematical trap unfolding here. If average inflation is running at 7%, but your boss gives you a 5% salary increase, well, notice the difference between these numbers. Because the cost of the world around you just grew by 7%, mathematically speaking, you are moving backwards. You're actively becoming poorer, despite getting a raise.
This shortfall, this invisible gap between your raise and inflation, is what economists call a decline in real income. Your paycheck grows on paper, sure, but your actual ability to buy things shrinks in reality. And this is exactly what millions of hardworking people experience every single year. It's that exhausting feeling of running faster and faster on a treadmill, only to realize somebody cranked up the speed and you're just sweating in the exact same place.
And you know what? The group that feels this squeeze the absolute hardest isn't the ultra-rich, and honestly, it often isn't the very poor either. It's the middle class. Why? Well, because we're talking about the absolute non-negotiables. Housing costs, school fees for the kids, medical bills, insurance premiums, transportation. These are everyday necessities, yet salary growth consistently struggles to keep pace with them, locking the middle class into this feeling of perpetual financial stagnation.
So at this point, you might logically be wondering, if inflation is making everyone poorer, why don't employers just match it? Why not just hand out 7 or 10% raises across the board? Well, businesses are trapped in the exact same cycle. They're facing those exact same rising costs for raw materials and energy. Their profit margins are getting squeezed, investors are demanding growth, and competition is fierce. Especially during times of economic uncertainty, companies simply cannot afford to hike wages at the same blistering speed as inflation, and that leaves both employees and employers completely frustrated.
Which brings us to Section 3,
the asset pivot, winning the game. If working harder for a traditional salary just isn't cutting it, how do the wealthy actually survive and thrive in this system?
Here's the fundamental difference in strategy. While inflation acts as a silent thief that absolutely destroys the purchasing power of your cash and fixed salaries, it has the exact opposite effect on assets. Inflation actually drives up the numerical value of assets. This is literally one of the biggest drivers of the wealth gap in modern economies. The people relying solely on fixed salaries get left behind, while those holding assets just watch their net worth automatically inflate.
The wealthy understand this intimately. They don't rely purely on a single paycheck. No, they pivot. They shift their entire focus to owning things that appreciate and scale over time. We're talking about real estate, stocks, owning businesses, creating intellectual property, and holding diversified investments. When you hold these things, as the currency loses its value, the nominal price of your assets actually goes up. They act as a massive shield against that hidden tax. So, what's the practical takeaway for you here? Well, historically, people who depend entirely on a single income source are always the ones who suffer the most during periods of high inflation. To adapt, you've got to transition your mindset. Step 1, increase your value creation by developing rare, highly sought-after skills. Step 2 is building multiple streams of income so you aren't just relying on one boss or one company. And step 3, this is the big one, is shifting your surplus cash into owning and creating assets.
This right here is the ultimate mindset shift you need to make. Your entire objective has to change. The goal isn't just begging for a higher salary or grinding 80 hours a week just to earn a little bit more cash. The real goal, really, the only way to genuinely get ahead is to grow your wealth at a rate that is faster than inflation. You absolutely have to outpace the invisible tax that is constantly eroding your hard work.
So, let's wrap this explainer up with a final thought. The uncomfortable truth is that a lot of people aren't falling behind because they're lazy. They're falling behind because the system itself is simply moving faster than their paycheck. So the very next time you get a salary hike, I want you to ignore the raw number. Instead, ask yourself this one absolutely crucial question. Is my income truly growing faster than my cost of living? Take a hard, honest look at your life. Whether it's housing, groceries, or education, what has become the most expensive part of your life recently? Because if you don't know the answer, you might just be running on an endless treadmill. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the systems around you.